Joe Ranga's story is not one of comfort or convenience. It is a story shaped by pressure, struggle, and relentless perseverance. Like steel hardened in flames, Joe was not broken by adversity. He was refined by it. Every challenge he faced became a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. Where others saw limits, he saw opportunities to grow stronger. From moments of doubt to seasons of hardship, Joe learned that pain can either define you or design you. He chose the harder path, the path of discipline, resilience, and self-belief. Failure never became his identity. Instead, it became his teacher. Each fall trained him to rise wiser, tougher, and more focused than before. What truly sets Joe Ranga apart is his mindset. He understands that true strength is not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward despite it. He transformed criticism into fuel, rejection into motivation, and fear into fire. Through consistency and inner conviction, he built character before chasing success. Today, Joe Ranga stands as proof that greatness is not born, it is forged. Forged in long nights, silent struggles, and uncelebrated efforts. His journey reminds us that the fire we face is often the force that shapes our strongest self. If you embrace the flames instead of running from them, you too can emerge unbreakable. Adversity was never a pause in Joe Ranga's journey, it was the process itself. From the earliest stages of his path, obstacles appeared not as rare interruptions, but as constant companions. Each challenge tested his patience, his belief, and his willingness to continue when the outcome was uncertain. Many would have viewed these moments as signs to stop, slow down, or choose an easier road. Joe chose differently. He understood that resistance is what builds strength, and without pressure, true growth never occurs. Every hardship demanded a response. When circumstances pushed back, Joe pushed harder. Financial struggles, emotional setbacks, and moments of isolation forced him to confront his own limits. But instead of retreating, he leaned into discomfort. Adversity taught him how to endure when motivation faded and how to stand firm when external support was absent. It trained his mind to remain steady under pressure and his spirit to remain unbroken in uncertainty. Through repeated trials, Joe learned that strength is not something discovered in comfort. It is developed when plans fail, when expectations collapse, and when progress feels invisible. Adversity stripped away excuses and illusions, leaving behind raw determination. Each challenge strengthened his ability to adapt, to think clearly in chaos, and to remain focused even when results were delayed. Over time, adversity became a silent teacher. It taught Joe patience when outcomes took longer than expected and discipline when emotions tried to take control. The weight he carried daily increased his capacity to carry responsibility, leadership, and purpose. What once felt overwhelming slowly became manageable, proving that strength grows in proportion to the battles faced. For Joe Ranga, adversity was not the enemy, it was the forge. Every difficult moment added another layer of resilience, another reason to keep going, and another proof that hardship does not weaken those who refuse to surrender to it. Failure was never a final verdict in Joe Ranga's life, it was a classroom. Each misstep, each wrong decision, and each unmet expectation became a lesson rather than a label. Where many see failure as proof of inadequacy, Joe saw it as information, clear, honest feedback showing what needed to change, improve, or strengthen. Instead of hiding from failure, he studied it closely, understanding that growth begins where comfort ends. Every failure forced Joe to slow down and reflect. It taught him accountability, pushing him to examine his actions rather than blame circumstances or people. When plans collapsed or efforts fell short, he didn't rush to escape the discomfort. He stayed with it, analyzing what went wrong and why. This willingness to confront mistakes built wisdom that success alone could never provide. Failure also reshaped his patience. Progress rarely followed a straight line, and repeated setbacks tested his emotional endurance. But through these moments, Joe learned that resilience is not built by winning constantly, but by continuing after losing. Each failure strengthened his ability to start again without bitterness, fear, or hesitation. He learned how to rebuild momentum when confidence was shaken and motivation was low. Over time, failure refined his judgment. It sharpened his decision-making, improved his strategies, and deepened his understanding of himself. Mistakes revealed his weaknesses, but they also revealed his capacity to learn, adapt, and evolve. What once felt like defeat slowly became direction, guiding him toward better choices and stronger foundations. For Joe Ranga, failure was not a setback, it was a guide. Each lesson carried him forward with greater clarity, humility, and determination, shaping a mindset that valued progress over perfection and learning over ego. Joe Ranga learned early that circumstances may influence a person, but they do not define them. External conditions, limited resources, unexpected obstacles, or unsupportive environments were never allowed to become excuses. Instead of focusing on what was missing, Joe focused on what could be controlled: his thoughts, his effort, and his response to pressure. This shift in perspective became one of the strongest foundations of his growth. When situations felt unfair or overwhelming, Joe trained his mind to remain steady. He understood that a negative mindset could turn even small challenges into permanent barriers, while a disciplined mindset could turn adversity into momentum. Rather than asking why things were difficult, he asked how he could move forward despite them. This mental approach allowed him to maintain clarity when others became discouraged. Joe's mindset was built on responsibility. He refused to hand over power to circumstances beyond his control. Whether progress was slow or results were delayed, he remained committed to daily improvement. This internal discipline allowed him to stay focused during uncertainty and motivated during long periods without visible success. His belief system kept him moving when external validation was absent. Over time, this mindset created emotional strength. Joe learned to regulate doubt, manage fear, and remain composed under pressure. Challenges no longer felt personal or defeating. They became temporary conditions that could be overcome through persistence and learning. His mental resilience grew stronger than the situations he faced, allowing him to rise above limitations imposed by environment or opinion. For Joe Ranga, success was never determined by where he started or what he lacked. It was determined by how he thought, how he responded, and how consistently he chose growth over excuses. Fear was never absent in Joe Ranga's journey, it was constant. Doubt, uncertainty, and the risk of failure followed every important decision he made. But Joe understood something critical. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it. Instead of waiting for confidence to appear, he acted first, allowing courage to grow through action. Each time fear surfaced, it tested his commitment. Fear whispered about potential loss, judgment, and disappointment. Many would have paused, hesitated, or retreated. Joe chose to confront it directly. He recognized that fear often appears when growth is near, and avoiding it would only delay progress. By taking steps forward while afraid, he trained himself to trust his ability to handle whatever followed. Courage also meant accepting vulnerability. Joe allowed himself to be seen trying, failing, and trying again. He understood that protecting ego was far more limiting than risking embarrassment. Every bold decision strengthened his self-belief, proving that he was capable of facing uncertainty without breaking. Fear slowly lost its power as courage became a habit. Over time, repeated acts of bravery reshaped his identity. What once felt terrifying became familiar. Speaking up, taking responsibility, and pursuing difficult goals no longer required hesitation. Courage became less about dramatic moments and more about daily choices, showing up when motivation was low and continuing when outcomes were unclear. For Joe Ranga, courage was a skill built through practice. By choosing action over avoidance, he transformed fear from a barrier into a signal, one that pointed directly toward growth and self-mastery. Joe Ranga's progress was built far away from applause, recognition, or validation. The most important work happened in silence, during moments when no one was watching and no one was encouraging him to continue. Discipline in the dark meant showing up consistently even when results were invisible and motivation was absent. Joe understood that real growth is created through habits practiced without external reward. There were days when effort felt heavy and progress felt non-existent. Still, Joe committed to the process. He followed routines, honored promises to himself, and maintained focus even when enthusiasm faded. Discipline became his anchor, keeping him moving forward during periods of uncertainty. He learned that motivation is unreliable, but discipline creates momentum regardless of emotional state. Working in isolation strengthened his character. Without praise or recognition, Joe developed internal standards that did not depend on approval. He learned to measure progress by effort rather than outcomes. This self-accountability allowed him to build resilience, patience, and consistency, qualities that cannot be developed through shortcuts or quick success. Over time, discipline in the dark built trust within himself. Each completed task reinforced his belief that he could rely on his own commitment. When challenges intensified, he didn't search for external validation. He relied on the habits and structure he had already built. The unseen hours became the foundation that supported visible progress later. For Joe Ranga, discipline was not about perfection. It was about showing up repeatedly, honoring the process, and continuing the work long before results became visible. Pain was an unavoidable part of Joe Ranga's journey, but it never became a stopping point. Emotional setbacks, personal disappointments, and moments of deep frustration tested his inner strength. Instead of allowing pain to weaken him, Joe chose to confront it, understand it, and transform it into fuel. He recognized that pain carries energy, and when directed properly, it can become a powerful force for growth. Rather than suppressing or escaping discomfort, Joe allowed himself to feel it fully. This honesty gave him clarity. Pain revealed where he cared deeply, where expectations were high, and where lessons needed to be learned. By facing these emotions instead of avoiding them, he gained self-awareness and emotional control. What once drained his energy slowly became a source of motivation. Pain also strengthened Joe's focus. Difficult experiences removed distractions and sharpened his priorities. When comfort was stripped away, what truly mattered became clear. He learned to channel frustration into discipline, disappointment into determination, and loss into renewed purpose. Each painful moment became a reason to push harder rather than give up. Over time, repeated exposure to hardship built emotional resilience. Joe developed the ability to remain steady even when circumstances felt overwhelming. Pain no longer dictated his actions, it informed them. It taught him patience, endurance, and mental toughness, qualities that cannot be developed through ease or success alone. For Joe Ranga, pain was not a burden to carry, it was raw material. Through awareness and discipline, he converted suffering into strength, shaping a mindset capable of enduring pressure and rising stronger from it. Consistency became the silent force behind Joe Ranga's transformation. Rather than relying on sudden bursts of effort or temporary motivation, he committed to steady, repeated action over time. He understood that character is not shaped in a single defining moment, but through thousands of small decisions made daily. Showing up again and again even when progress felt slow, became his greatest advantage. Each day presented a choice, to act or to delay, to remain disciplined or to give in to comfort. Joe chose consistency. He maintained routines, honored commitments, and continued working regardless of mood or circumstances. This repetition strengthened his self-control and reinforced a strong work ethic. Over time, effort became automatic, reducing the need for constant motivation. Consistency also built trust, both internally and externally. Joe learned to trust himself because he followed through on what he started. This self-trust strengthened his confidence and reduced self-doubt. Others began to rely on him as well, recognizing his dependability and commitment. His actions spoke louder than promises, establishing credibility through behavior rather than words. Through consistent effort, Joe developed patience. He learned that meaningful progress requires time and that rushing the process often leads to burnout or disappointment. By focusing on long-term improvement instead of instant results, he cultivated emotional maturity and resilience. Each repeated effort added another layer to his character. For Joe Ranga, consistency was not about intensity, it was about reliability. The discipline to continue even when excitement faded, shaped his integrity, confidence, and inner strength. Joe Ranga's journey stands as a clear reminder that greatness is not a gift handed out by circumstance, privilege, or luck. It is the result of deliberate effort, endured struggle, and relentless self-development. Nothing about his path was automatic or guaranteed. Every step forward required sacrifice, patience, and the willingness to endure discomfort long before any reward appeared. Greatness demanded responsibility. Joe learned that waiting for ideal conditions only delays growth. Instead of expecting opportunity to arrive fully formed, he built himself to be ready when it did. Long hours, repeated failures, and quiet perseverance became part of his daily reality. These experiences shaped his mindset, sharpened his discipline, and strengthened his resolve. The process of being forged was gradual and demanding. Like metal shaped under intense heat and pressure, Joe was refined through difficulty. Each challenge removed weakness, exposed areas for improvement, and forced adaptation. What remained over time was not perfection, but strength built through endurance and experience. Joe understood that recognition comes after preparation, not before it. He focused on becoming capable rather than visible, knowing that true greatness carries depth, not just appearance. The effort invested when no one was watching became the foundation for resilience, leadership, and long-term impact. For Joe Ranga, greatness was never a destination. It was a process shaped by struggle, discipline, and the refusal to quit, proving that those willing to endure the fire are the ones who emerge truly strong. Through every hardship Joe Ranga faced, a deeper sense of purpose slowly took shape. Struggle forced him to look beyond surface-level goals and question why he was pushing forward. Easy paths rarely demand clarity, but difficult journeys require meaning to survive them. Joe discovered that without purpose, pain feels unbearable, but with purpose, even the heaviest struggles become tolerable. Moments of exhaustion and doubt pushed Joe to redefine his reasons. Success was no longer just about achievement or recognition. It became about growth, self-respect, and proving to himself that adversity would not control his direction. Struggle stripped away shallow motivations and replaced them with something stronger, an internal drive rooted in meaning rather than outcome. Purpose gave Joe endurance. When motivation faded and results were delayed, purpose kept him grounded. It reminded him that every challenge carried significance, even when progress was invisible. This sense of meaning transformed routine effort into commitment and setbacks into necessary steps rather than wasted time. As his purpose strengthened, so did his focus. Distractions lost their appeal and excuses lost their power. Joe became selective with his energy, aligning his actions with long-term intent instead of short-term comfort. Purpose became the lens through which he made decisions, guiding him during uncertainty and pressure. For Joe Ranga, struggle was not random suffering. It was the process through which purpose was clarified, sharpened, and solidified, turning endurance into direction and effort into meaning. Joe Ranga understood that a powerful vision alone is not enough. It must be anchored in reality to create meaningful progress. Dreams without a practical foundation risk becoming illusions, and ambition without actionable steps risks collapse. From the beginning, Joe paired his aspirations with clear assessments of his strengths, weaknesses, and the obstacles ahead. This grounded approach allowed him to dream boldly while moving strategically. Every goal Joe pursued was accompanied by a plan, discipline, and measurable steps. He learned to break large ambitions into actionable tasks, ensuring that momentum could be built even in the face of uncertainty. By anchoring his vision in reality, he maintained clarity about what could be achieved in the present moment and what required time and preparation. Reality also kept Joe accountable. He did not rely solely on hope or motivation. He relied on honest evaluation and consistent progress. Each decision, action, and effort was measured against the context of what was achievable, preventing wasted energy and reinforcing practical growth. This balance of ambition and pragmatism became a cornerstone of his success. Joe's grounded vision also allowed him to adapt when circumstances changed. Instead of clinging blindly to an idealized outcome, he remained flexible, adjusting strategies while keeping the ultimate goal in sight. This adaptability ensured resilience and prevented discouragement when setbacks arose. For Joe Ranga, vision anchored in reality was the bridge between aspiration and achievement. It ensured that his dreams were not just inspirational ideas but actionable paths toward real, lasting impact. Joe Ranga's resilience was not an overnight achievement. It was forged through countless repetitions of effort, failure, and recovery. Each time he faced setbacks, disappointments, or resistance, he chose to continue rather than surrender. This repeated confrontation with adversity built a mental toughness that became a defining feature of his character. Resilience, for Joe, meant learning to absorb shocks without breaking. Each challenge tested his patience, determination, and emotional control. Repetition of difficult experiences strengthened his capacity to endure pressure and uncertainty. Over time, facing hardships became less intimidating because he had built a track record of persistence and recovery. The repetition of effort also created confidence. Joe knew from experience that even when circumstances were unfavorable, consistent action would yield results eventually. This belief became self-reinforcing. Each time he persevered through difficulty, his trust in his own abilities grew stronger. Resilience was cultivated not in comfort, but in the repetitive process of rising after every fall. Moreover, repetition taught adaptability. Joe learned patterns, recognized warning signs, and developed strategies to navigate challenges more effectively. Each cycle of effort and recovery became an opportunity to refine his approach, making him more efficient, thoughtful, and prepared for future obstacles. For Joe Ranga, resilience was not an abstract trait. It was a skill developed through repeated experience. Each encounter with adversity reinforced his inner strength, making him capable of handling increasingly greater challenges with poise and determination. Joe Ranga's influence was not granted by title or position. It was earned through consistent action and integrity. He understood that true leadership is not about giving orders, but about demonstrating the behaviors, mindset, and values that others can trust and emulate. Every choice he made, every challenge he faced, and every effort he put in was observed by those around him, shaping their perception of what is possible through commitment and courage. Leadership, for Joe, began with accountability. He held himself to higher standards than anyone else could demand, refusing to cut corners or compromise on principles. By consistently acting with discipline and purpose, he created a visible model for others to follow. His actions became lessons in perseverance, resilience, and ethical conduct, showing that leadership is rooted in doing, not just directing. Joe also learned that empathy and understanding are essential aspects of leading by example. He recognized the struggles of those around him, offering guidance and support where needed, but never shielding them from the realities of hard work and responsibility. By balancing compassion with high expectations, he inspired others to rise to challenges rather than rely on shortcuts or excuses. Over time, his consistent demonstration of values created trust and credibility. People followed him not because of authority, but because they saw the authenticity in his effort and the results of his approach. His leadership became contagious, influencing others to adopt similar habits, mindsets, and resilience. For Joe Ranga, leadership was inseparable from personal integrity and consistent action. By living his principles every day, he showed that the most powerful way to guide others is to first set the example through one's own relentless pursuit of excellence. Joe Ranga recognized early on that breakthroughs rarely happen by accident. They are the result of persistent effort, experimentation, and a willingness to challenge conventional approaches. Innovation for him was not simply about new ideas. It was about the consistent application of creativity under pressure, combined with the discipline to refine and implement solutions over time. Persistence allowed Joe to explore ideas without fear of failure. Every attempt, whether successful or not, provided data, insight, and experience that informed the next step. He approached challenges with curiosity, analyzing patterns, testing hypotheses, and adjusting strategies based on real-world feedback. This iterative process turned obstacles into opportunities for improvement and invention. Joe also understood that innovation requires patience. Immediate results are rare, and the path to meaningful breakthroughs is often slow and demanding. By maintaining persistent effort, even when progress was incremental or invisible, he created the conditions for ideas to mature, evolve, and eventually deliver impact. Small consistent actions compounded over time, forming the foundation for larger achievements. Collaboration played a role as well. While persistence kept him moving forward, Joe sought diverse perspectives to enhance creativity. He recognized that combining consistent effort with external input allows innovation to scale and adapt, ensuring that solutions are both practical and transformative. For Joe Ranga, innovation was inseparable from persistence. By committing to continuous effort, learning from failure, and iterating relentlessly, he transformed challenges into catalysts for creative solutions, proving that true progress is born from sustained, disciplined experimentation. Joe Ranga understood that true success is measured not by personal gain alone, but by the lasting impact one leaves on others and the world. From the start of his journey, he focused on building a life that would inspire, influence, and uplift, knowing that actions have ripple effects far beyond immediate results. Legacy for Joe was not about fame or recognition. It was about creating value that endures. He approached every endeavor with intentionality, asking how his work could benefit others or set a standard for excellence. Whether through mentoring, leading by example, or innovating in his field, Joe sought to leave behind lessons and structures that others could learn from and build upon. Each decision was weighed not just for its personal benefit, but for its potential to contribute to a greater purpose. Joe also understood that legacy requires consistency and integrity. Short-term gains without ethical grounding might provide temporary recognition, but they cannot create lasting influence. By remaining disciplined, transparent, and principled, he ensured that his actions were trustworthy and replicable, inspiring confidence and respect from those around him. Over time, his cumulative efforts began to resonate. People observed his resilience, courage, and commitment to growth, and in doing so, they were motivated to pursue their own potential. His impact extended beyond immediate achievements, shaping mindsets, behaviors, and opportunities for future generations. For Joe Ranga, building a legacy was about planting seeds through persistent effort, meaningful influence, and principled action, ensuring that his journey would continue to inspire and guide long after individual milestones were reached. Joe Ranga's journey was defined by an insatiable desire to learn and improve. He understood that mastery is not a destination but a continuous process of acquiring knowledge, refining skills, and applying lessons in real-world scenarios. Each experience, whether success or failure, became a source of insight that he could analyze, internalize, and leverage for growth. Relentless learning required humility. Joe recognized that no matter how accomplished he became, there was always more to understand. He approached challenges with curiosity, asking questions, seeking feedback, and studying patterns of success and failure. This mindset allowed him to adapt quickly, innovate, and avoid repeating mistakes that others might accept as permanent. Learning for Joe was also deliberate. He identified areas that required improvement, set specific goals, and engaged in consistent practice. He combined theoretical knowledge with hands-on application, understanding that true mastery emerges when learning is integrated into action. Over time, repeated cycles of study, experimentation, and reflection strengthened both his expertise and confidence. Joe also viewed learning as a tool for empowerment. By expanding his skills and understanding, he increased his capacity to solve problems, make decisions, and lead effectively. Each lesson gained not only enhanced his personal growth but also improved his ability to influence and inspire others. For Joe Ranga, mastery was not about natural talent alone. It was the product of relentless learning, disciplined practice, and the willingness to grow continuously. Through this dedication, he built the knowledge, skill, and wisdom necessary to achieve sustained success and make a meaningful impact. Joe Ranga understood that lasting influence cannot be manufactured or forced. It must be rooted in authenticity. He realized that people are drawn to those who act consistently with their values, beliefs, and principles. Authenticity, for Joe, was about aligning words with actions, demonstrating integrity, and being genuine in every interaction, regardless of audience or circumstance. Throughout his journey, Joe made deliberate choices to remain true to himself. He did not compromise his principles for short-term gain or external approval. This unwavering commitment to authenticity allowed him to earn trust naturally. People followed him not because he demanded it, but because they respected and believed in the sincerity of his actions and intentions. Authenticity also enhanced Joe's ability to connect with others. By being open about his struggles, failures, and lessons learned, he created relatability and empathy. Others could see themselves in his journey, making his guidance, advice, and leadership more impactful. He transformed his experiences into shared wisdom, fostering trust and inspiration in those around him. Moreover, authenticity amplified the effectiveness of his influence. Unlike superficial charisma, which fades, genuine behavior creates enduring respect and loyalty. Joe's words carried weight because they were backed by lived experience, consistent effort, and transparent intent. His influence became a reflection of his integrity rather than his position or recognition. For Joe Ranga, true influence was inseparable from authenticity. By remaining genuine, consistent, and principled, he built connections, inspired action, and left an enduring mark on everyone he encountered, proving that the most powerful form of leadership comes from being unapologetically oneself. Joe Ranga recognized early in his journey that rigidity is the enemy of progress. Life, business, and personal growth are filled with unexpected challenges, shifting circumstances, and changing dynamics. He understood that the ability to adapt, to adjust strategies, mindset, and actions in response to new information, is not a sign of weakness, but a hallmark of strength and resilience. Adaptability allowed Joe to navigate uncertainty with confidence. When plans failed or circumstances shifted, he didn't panic or retreat. Instead, he assessed the situation, identified alternative paths, and took decisive action. This flexibility enabled him to continue forward momentum even when conditions were less than ideal. It also allowed him to transform potential setbacks into opportunities for growth and innovation. Joe also cultivated mental adaptability. He learned to question assumptions, challenge ingrained beliefs, and remain open to new perspectives. This mental flexibility enhanced problem-solving abilities, encouraged creative thinking, and allowed him to respond effectively to complex or unforeseen challenges. He recognized that clinging rigidly to outdated strategies limits growth, while openness to change creates possibilities. Physical and practical adaptability were equally important. Joe adjusted routines, strategies, and approaches to match evolving goals and environments. By remaining agile in execution while maintaining a clear vision, he avoided stagnation and kept progress consistent. This ability to pivot without losing sight of long-term objectives became a critical component of his sustained success. For Joe Ranga, adaptability was more than a survival mechanism, it was a strategic advantage. By embracing change, remaining flexible, and responding intelligently to new challenges, he strengthened his resilience, expanded his opportunities, and ensured that progress was possible even in the most unpredictable circumstances. Joe Ranga understood that gratitude is not merely a passive feeling, but an active force that shapes mindset, motivation, and perspective. Even amidst hardship, setbacks, and intense pressure, he cultivated a conscious awareness of what he had learned, and the opportunities available to him. Gratitude became a lens through which he interpreted challenges, turning obstacles into lessons and struggles into fuel for growth. Practicing gratitude allowed Joe to maintain balance and clarity. While ambition drove him forward, gratitude kept him grounded. He acknowledged the support he received, the knowledge he gained from failures, and the progress achieved through persistent effort. This awareness reduced feelings of entitlement or frustration and replaced them with humility, perspective, and focus. Gratitude also amplified resilience. By recognizing small victories, lessons learned, and moments of progress, even when larger goals seemed distant, Joe maintained motivation and emotional stability. Gratitude transformed setbacks from discouragement into appreciation for the journey, helping him sustain effort over long periods of uncertainty. Furthermore, gratitude strengthened his relationships. By appreciating mentors, peers, and collaborators, Joe fostered trust, loyalty, and collaboration. His ability to express genuine acknowledgement and respect created a positive environment around him, attracting support and reinforcing his influence. For Joe Ranga, gratitude was not just a personal practice. It was a driving force that fueled perseverance, cultivated humility, and enhanced perspective. It allowed him to navigate challenges with balance, appreciate progress along the way, and remain inspired to push further, even when the path was difficult. Joe Ranga recognized that true impact extends far beyond individual achievement. While personal growth, success, and mastery were important, he understood that a meaningful life is defined by how one contributes to others, communities, and the world at large. Vision beyond self meant seeing his journey not just as a pursuit of personal goals, but as a platform to inspire, uplift, and create opportunities for those around him. This perspective shaped every decision Joe made. He prioritized actions that had ripple effects, mentoring others, sharing knowledge, and creating systems that allowed people to grow alongside him. By aligning his efforts with broader purpose, he ensured that his success would be sustainable and multiply through the impact on others rather than remaining isolated. Joe also realized that vision beyond self requires foresight and empathy. Understanding the needs, challenges, and aspirations of others allowed him to make decisions that benefited both his personal trajectory and the collective good. This balance of ambition and service became a defining characteristic of his leadership and influence. Furthermore, this outward-focused vision enhanced his resilience and motivation. Challenges became not only personal tests, but opportunities to demonstrate commitment to something larger than himself. Even during setbacks, knowing that his work contributed to others' growth provided clarity, purpose, and renewed determination to persevere. For Joe Ranga, vision beyond self transformed personal ambition into a mission. By thinking in terms of contribution and long-term impact, he ensured that his journey created value that extended beyond his own life, leaving a lasting imprint on the world and inspiring others to pursue excellence with purpose. Joe Ranga's life demonstrates that persistence is the engine of achievement, the force that carries vision and effort through the toughest trials. He understood that talent, opportunity, and initial success are insufficient to sustain growth. It is the relentless commitment to keep moving forward, day after day, that separates those who succeed from those who falter. Persistence meant showing up even when progress was invisible and motivation was low. Joe faced countless obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt, yet he refused to let temporary challenges dictate his trajectory. Each obstacle became a test of endurance, a measure of whether he would continue to act despite uncertainty, fatigue, or fear. Joe also approached persistence strategically. It was not mindless repetition, but consistent, focused effort toward clearly defined goals. He broke large ambitions into manageable steps, tackling them with unwavering determination, adjusting tactics when necessary but never abandoning the mission. This careful balance of steadfastness and adaptability amplified the effectiveness of his persistence. Persistence cultivated resilience. Every failure endured and every challenge overcome strengthened Joe's confidence in his ability to handle adversity. He learned that persistence is a skill honed over time, built through repeated acts of courage, discipline, and deliberate action. The more he persisted, the stronger his capacity to withstand future trials became. For Joe Ranga, persistence was more than just effort. It was a mindset, a daily commitment, and a principle that ensured progress, growth, and ultimate success. It transformed obstacles into opportunities and dreams into reality, proving that relentless perseverance is the cornerstone of extraordinary achievement. Joe Ranga built his life and career on a foundation of unwavering integrity. He understood that true success is meaningless without honesty, accountability, and ethical conduct. Integrity for him was not just about following rules or avoiding wrongdoing, it was about aligning every action with his core values, ensuring that his decisions and behaviors reflected who he truly was. From early on, Joe committed to doing what was right, even when it was difficult or went unnoticed. He recognized that shortcuts, deceit, or compromise might provide temporary gains, but they erode trust, credibility, and self-respect. By prioritizing integrity over convenience, he earned the respect of colleagues, peers, and those he led, creating a reputation that reinforced both influence and effectiveness. Integrity also shaped Joe's internal compass. It guided decision-making in complex situations, helping him navigate ambiguity with clarity and confidence. When faced with competing pressures, he relied on principles rather than impulse or external expectation, ensuring that his choices were consistent, transparent, and honorable. Furthermore, integrity amplified leadership and influence. People were drawn to Joe because his words matched his actions. His promises were reliable, his guidance trustworthy, and his character visible in every interaction. This consistency inspired loyalty, cooperation, and belief in the mission he pursued. For Joe Ranga, integrity was more than a moral standard, it was a practical tool for success and a foundation for enduring impact. By living with honesty, accountability, and ethical commitment, he built trust, reinforced credibility, and ensured that every achievement was both meaningful and sustainable. Joe Ranga understood that patience is not passive waiting. It is an active, strategic approach to growth, decision-making, and long-term success. He recognized that meaningful progress rarely occurs overnight, and that rushed actions or impulsive decisions often lead to mistakes, setbacks, or missed opportunities. Patience allowed him to operate with foresight, maintain composure, and focus on the bigger picture, even when immediate results were not visible. Through patience, Joe learned to embrace the process rather than obsess over outcomes. He accepted that every stage of growth, no matter how slow or challenging, was necessary to build a durable foundation for success. Waiting strategically meant giving ideas time to mature, skills time to develop, and relationships time to strengthen. This mindset helped him avoid frustration and stay committed to long-term objectives. Patience also enhanced his decision-making. Instead of reacting impulsively to challenges, criticism, or unexpected changes, Joe took time to analyze situations carefully, consider multiple perspectives, and plan his next steps with precision. This deliberation reduced errors, increased efficiency, and ensured that each action was intentional and effective. Moreover, patience strengthened resilience. In moments of adversity, he remained calm and composed, understanding that temporary difficulties are part of the larger journey. By practicing patience, he maintained emotional stability, avoided hasty conclusions, and continued to persevere even when immediate rewards were absent. For Joe Ranga, patience was more than a virtue, it was a strategic tool. By combining foresight, composure, and consistent effort, he transformed waiting into preparation, obstacles into opportunities, and long-term vision into achievable reality. Joe Ranga recognized that growth and innovation often require challenging existing norms, questioning assumptions, and stepping beyond conventional boundaries. He understood that comfort and tradition can create limitations, and that true progress demands the courage to think differently, take risks, and pursue paths that others may avoid or dismiss. This courage was not reckless but calculated. Joe carefully evaluated situations, identified areas where change was necessary, and acted decisively when the potential for impact outweighed the fear of resistance. By confronting outdated practices, systemic obstacles, or limiting beliefs, he opened doors to opportunities that others might have missed due to fear or complacency. Challenging the status quo also demanded resilience. Joe faced criticism, skepticism, and doubt from peers and observers who preferred familiar approaches. Yet, he remained steadfast, understanding that meaningful change often provokes discomfort and resistance. He used these challenges to strengthen his convictions and sharpen his strategies, turning opposition into motivation rather than discouragement. Moreover, this courage inspired those around him. By daring to question norms and pursue innovative solutions, Joe encouraged others to think critically, embrace creativity, and take initiative. His willingness to confront conventional wisdom set a standard for leadership and influence, demonstrating that courage combined with thoughtful action can create transformative results. For Joe Ranga, challenging the status quo was not merely an act of defiance, it was a commitment to progress, innovation, and meaningful impact. Through courage, vision, and persistence, he turned obstacles into opportunities and created a path for others to follow. Joe Ranga understood that success is not solely built on knowledge, skill, or effort. It is equally grounded in emotional intelligence. He recognized that the ability to understand, manage, and harness emotions, both his own and those of others, is critical for making effective decisions, maintaining relationships, and navigating challenges with clarity and composure. Emotional intelligence allowed Joe to remain self-aware. He developed a keen understanding of his strengths, weaknesses, triggers, and motivations. This self-awareness enabled him to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively in stressful situations, turning potential conflicts or setbacks into opportunities for growth and problem-solving. Joe also mastered empathy, which strengthened his connections and influence. By understanding the perspectives, emotions, and needs of others, he could communicate more effectively, inspire collaboration, and build trust. This ability to connect on a deeper level made him a more persuasive leader, a better mentor, and a reliable teammate in high-pressure environments. In addition, emotional intelligence enhanced Joe's resilience. He learned to manage frustration, stress, and disappointment without losing focus or motivation. By regulating his emotions and maintaining a balanced mindset, he could approach challenges strategically, think clearly under pressure, and sustain effort during prolonged periods of difficulty. For Joe Ranga, emotional intelligence was a foundation upon which every other quality, discipline, leadership, innovation, and influence, was built. By mastering self-awareness, empathy, and emotional regulation, he transformed relationships, decision-making, and challenges into avenues for growth and lasting impact. Joe Ranga's story is a testament to the transformative power of resilience, discipline, and purpose. Every challenge he faced, every failure he endured, and every risk he took contributed to the person he became, a leader, innovator, and inspiration forged by fire. His journey demonstrates that greatness is not given, inherited, or stumbled upon. It is built through relentless effort, unwavering integrity, and the courage to rise every time life knocks you down. Through adversity, Joe learned to turn pain into power, setbacks into lessons, and vision into action. Through consistency, patience, and emotional intelligence, he not only shaped his own destiny but also influenced and uplifted those around him. Each principle he embodied, persistence, adaptability, authenticity, and purpose, combined to create a legacy that extends far beyond personal achievement. Joe Ranga's life reminds us that the fire we face is not meant to destroy us, it is meant to refine us. By embracing challenges, committing to growth, and leading with integrity, anyone can transform obstacles into opportunities and forge a path toward lasting impact. His story is more than an example of success, it is a blueprint for courage, resilience, and greatness. In the end, being forged by fire is not just about surviving hardship, it is about emerging stronger, wiser, and more capable of leaving a meaningful mark on the world.